All right, today we're going to dig into a really fantastic piece on business by Mohamed Ajloni, and it's all about something called operations management. Now, this might sound a bit dry, but stick with me, because this is literally the engine that makes any company run. Understanding it is absolutely essential.
So let's just jump right in with a huge question. I mean, you've seen this happen, right? A startup launches with an amazing idea, everybody's talking about it, they've got the funding, and then a year or two later, they're gone. What happens? Why do so many great ideas just fizzle out? Well, it turns out that the reason, more often than you'd think, is this kind of hidden showstopper. It wasn't the idea that was bad or the marketing. It was something they probably didn't think about until it was way too late: their operations management.
Okay, so what exactly is operations management? In a nutshell, it's about making sure your company is doing two things at once. First, it has to be effective, which just means you're doing the right things that your customers actually want. And second, it has to be efficient, which means you're doing those things right without wasting a bunch of time, money, or materials. That distinction is so important.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the basic model for how any operation works. Then, we'll get into the 6 key ways you measure how well it's performing. After that, we'll talk about what the customer sees versus what you see internally. And finally, we'll wrap up with how to keep getting better. First up, the transformation system. Let's pop the hood on your business and really understand the basic mechanics of how this engine actually works. You know, at its core, it's actually a pretty simple 3-step flow. It all starts with your inputs. These are all your resources. Then comes the transformation stage, where you convert those resources into something else. And finally, you get your outputs, the products and services you deliver to your customer. Simple, right? Okay, let's zoom in on those inputs for a sec, because there are 2 types. The first type is transformed inputs. These are the things that are actually being changed by the process. So this could be raw materials for a factory, a patient in a hospital, or even just raw data that you're turning into a useful report. And then you've got the second category, transforming inputs. These are the resources that are doing the changing. This includes the obvious stuff like your buildings and your technology, but it also includes what Adzluni calls guiding resources, things like your standard operating procedures or SOPs and your company policies. They make sure the work gets done consistently. So you might be wondering, where do people fit into all this? Are they just another input? No, and this is a really crucial point. People are not just another resource. They're the ones with the creativity and the judgment. They're the ones who lead other people and manage all the other resources in the system. Okay, so if operations is your engine, how do you know if it's actually running well? Well, that's where these 6 dimensions of performance come in. I want you to think of these like the gauges on your car's dashboard. Just six key measures that together give you a complete, holistic picture of how healthy your operations really are. Okay, so here they are, the big 6: quality, cost, delivery, productivity, safety, and last but not least, morale. Each one tells you something different and vital about your business. Let's break them down. Let's start with the absolute top priority: quality. This is about one thing: meeting your customers' expectations. And the real secret here is that you can't just check for quality at the end of the line. It has to be designed and built into every single step of your process from the very beginning. Next up, we have cost and delivery. Cost is pretty straightforward, right? It's about being profitable by managing all your expenses, both direct and indirect. Delivery, on the other hand, is all about being reliable. It's not just about speed, it's about being dependable and showing up on time every time. Now, this next one, productivity, is where a lot of businesses get tripped up. It's not just about cranking out more stuff. And there's a quote from the source material that just nails it. Increasing output at the expense of defects or accidents is not true productivity. It is operational failure. Wow. And that brings us, naturally, to safety. Look, this is so much more than just a rule book or compliance checkbox. A real safety culture protects everyone: your people, your equipment, your reputation. It's truly a sign of a mature organization that's thinking about the long haul. And finally, we have morale. Now, don't just gloss over this one. Seriously, this might be the most powerful of them all. Think of morale as a multiplier. When it's high, it boosts everything else. But when it's low, it just drags everything down with it. You can have the best processes in the world, but they'll fall apart if your people aren't engaged. Okay, so we've got all these metrics, but how do they fit together? This is where we look at what your customer sees versus what's happening behind the curtain. See, your customer directly feels your quality, your cost, and your delivery. That's their experience. But what they don't see are your internal workings, your productivity, your safety, and your morale. But here's the kicker. Those internal measures are the foundation. You simply cannot deliver great quality, cost, and delivery on the outside if things are a mess on the inside.
So you've got your engine, you've got your dashboard. Now what? Well, this brings us to our final and maybe most important idea, the cycle of improvement. The thing about great operations is that they are never done. They are always, always evolving.
And the process itself is a really simple but powerful loop. It goes like this. First, you measure your performance against your targets. When you find a gap, you dig deep to find the real root cause, not just the symptom. And then you make smart improvements to your inputs or your processes to close that gap. And then you start the whole cycle over again.
So as we start to pull all of this together, there's one big idea I really want you to take away. True excellence in operations isn't about being number one in a single area, like being the absolute cheapest or the absolute fastest. The real goal is to create a balanced engine. It's about masterfully managing the trade-offs between all 6 of these dimensions: quality, cost, delivery, productivity, safety, and morale. That's how you build a system that's not just strong, but truly sustainable. So I want to leave you with a question to really think about for your own team or your own company. Is your operational engine just running day to day? Or have you intentionally designed it, thinking about all 6 of these dimensions to make sure it's truly built to last?